For years, IT sector has been the backbone of India's services industry. India's services industry contributes significantly to the GDP of the nation. Now, it seems the threat of AI is looming large over the sector. In a recent stress test conducted by an American company, it is observed that in the coming future, it is speculated in the coming future that artificial intelligence could erode India's IT arbitrage, as India's IT sector is largely dependent upon highly skilled but low cost worker. So now that cost compensation can easily be carried out by the artificial intelligence. To what extent this threat is real and what kind of damage it can do to India's IT and more general services sector, let us try to analyze in this particular video. Now, first of all, to give you context of this topic, a company called as Trini Research, it has flagged a long-term risk to India's IT-led growth model. It has stated that AI coding agents that is being incorporated by many companies and their number will grow in the coming future will definitely compress the global software cost, and it is quite possible in a scenario analysis that India's IT sector will also not be left behind. The entire services sector would also face some degree of structural vulnerability because of the way how entire structure evolved after 1990s as such. Focus was on 2028 stress test. A stress test is generally conducted, this kind of an exercise that is conducted by companies to analyze, conducted by research company largely to analyze that how if everything goes wrong or something goes wrong, situation would turn in the near future. So in this regard, India's IT model, if you try to think, which largely has provided services to the developed economies such as Americas and Europe, it is dependent upon the labor cost advantage, built upon the labor cost advantage, we can say. The reason why American companies have hired so many IT workers from India is obviously because of the low cost services which they can provide. If the same services is being provided by an American professional, for example, American citizen, for example, the cost will be many times higher. So that's where the role of AI comes, because it is believed that when artificial intelligence began to do coding, began to do most of work that is currently being done by the human workforce, that would reduce the marginal cost of coding towards near zero. It's not only competition, but the cost of the services would reduce to near zero. It would be similar to just the electricity cost that companies will have to bear to run these AI algorithms and AI bots as such. Pricing power and billing rates will decline significantly, and that would definitely lead to a faster erosion than market can expect in the near future. To some extent, all these threats have been priced in the stock market also, as we have seen the decline in the IT, Nifty IT in the recent few months, as we can say, and same thing is being seen in the IT sector of other developing economy as well. Now, the recent stress scenario that was tested by this particular company, again, we have to understand this stress test is just a hypothetical scenario. It does not necessarily mean that definitely all those things are going to happen, but based on the current rate of development, based on the current scenario, if you extrapolate in the future, that's what the company is trying to say. So AI would certainly cut the development cost by year 2028, which is not very far, just 2 years right from now. Stable coins, now we know that many of the alternative coins apart from Bitcoin has also taken large chunk of the market as such. So stable coins, Ethernet and all that, they would disrupt traditional payment system, and it is believed by this particular stress testing that S&P 500, which is the measurement of United States stock market health, it would plunge by 38% from peak. Contract cancellations are expected to increase in the coming future also. When you talk about contract cancellations, it means the American companies, the contract which they generally give to Indian companies, in those we will see a decline in share as such. And because of this, external sector will be significantly impacted. As far as India is concerned, we know that services play a very important role here. These are the trade surplus, we can say, or this current account surplus kind of sector. And due to the decline of the services, we would expect rupee to also fall. This is the projection of this stress test, that by 2-3 years rupee would fall by at least 18% vis-a-vis United States dollar. Merchandise trade deficit already we face, because as far as the trade, goods trade is concerned, India runs a deficit, but with the services trade, it runs a surplus. So services to some extent have been historically compensating the trade deficit of the goods. So that is something also going to change, and IMF discussions in extreme cases can take place that how to stabilize the economy. Now, what is the current scenario as far as India's services sector is concerned? So if you look at the graph here, right from 2005, we can clearly see that it has remained stable, and to some extent its export and services have kept on rising as such. So I talk about percentage of world services export, it has kept on rising. Goods export, it has remained kind of same, and that is what exactly is reflected in last couple of years also, because year on year basis, if you measure 16 to 20, that means 2016 to 2020 with 23 to 25, what we see is that services sector and export more specifically have registered a growth of 14%, and it contributes more than 50% of gross value that is added to India's economy as such. And it does not mean that in next year itself you are going to face a decline. Rather, the current data points toward a very hopeful figure that by 26 end of year 2026, fiscal year 2026, expansion is estimated in the entire sector at 9.1%. That means if you look at these data, we can understand that no matter whatever happen in future, as of now, at present, the services sector and more specifically the IT sector in that remains a primary growth engine as far as India's growth is concerned. Now, what is the status of India as far as the global services position is concerned? So, India has emerged as the 7th largest services exporter at the global scale. Global share is just 2% in 2005, and it has rose to 4.3%. That means you can say it has more than doubled in last 20 years, something like that. In the first quarter of fiscal year 26, we have registered a growth of 10%, which is definitely a very good figure. And software services in this is having contribution of more than 40% of entire services export as such. So by looking at this data, what we can understand that services sector is definitely the backbone of India's economy, as you have seen in the last slide. And within services sector, the export is something that also is where India enjoys its core competency. India enjoys undisputed position as such. Now, if we talk about IT and IT related services industry, revenue it has generated in last year was of roughly $283 billion with a year on year growth of 5.1%, which is considered a very healthy growth. Services attract more than 80% plus FDI inflows in India. So we can understand how significant this sector is. Not only it is helping us in boosting our export revenues, not only it is helping us in boosting the employment generation within country as such, but at the same time the investment that is made in India, 80+% of that in services sector is coming in the IT sector itself as such. So any significant, or we can say this adverse effect on this sector due to the disruption caused by AI would cause disruption in all of these data and volumes as well. But as of now, it seems, and NASSCOM, for example, you talk about the National Association of Software Companies in India, they have stated that still services sector is not feeling a stress that should be concerning nature. Rather, they are showing resilience. So that is something which is a hopeful scenario. Now, a structural vulnerability that this particular stress test has talked about is related to a case if services sector of India is affected, if export slows down, that means the surplus that used to finance the trade deficit would no longer be there. So India would start to run a entire current account deficit as such. That would also cause a problem as far as it's the rupees strength of the Indian national currency, that is rupees concerned. AI may reduce employment elasticity. India might not be able to generate employment at a rapid scale as it used to do before in last 1 or 2 decades as such, because again, even for employment generation in the services sector, IT has been the largest contributor. Currency risk, as we have discussed, definitely is there because of surplus swings. Surplus swing simply it means that there is more demand of US dollar as compared to Indian rupees. So if US dollar is at higher demand, Indian rupee is at lower demand, that means obviously rupee will weaken vis-a-vis dollar, and that is what a stress test has shown, that 18% of decline we can see in the future. Long-term competitiveness that India has enjoyed, undisputed position that we have discussed India has enjoyed in the sector, especially in the export of services, that would definitely be challenged due to the AI disruption. Now, it does not mean that just because this stress model has talked about it, it has given a scenario, it can happen. It does not mean that it is an immediate crisis as such that in the next couple of years, entire services sector and IT services will collapse. That is not going to happen. A stress test always talks about the worst case scenario if situation does not change. Plus, it also does not take into account the evolution that we might see in the services and IT sector of India itself. So that is something we have to also account for here. So it is a stress scenario, not a base forecast. Macro indicators as far as of India is concerned, it seems to be stable as per the recent data that we have received. Services remain relatively stable anchor in the entire growth of India GDP of India, and growth has been moderated to 8%, which is still compared to other developing, even developed and developing economies, is a very healthy growth, is very good growth as such. So the question is, what should be the way forward? What we can ensure to make sure that the AI disruption does not cause a collapse or massive disruption in the services sector, especially IT sector? So first recommendation is move up the value chain. Indian companies, they have to incorporate artificial intelligence in their own working environment. AI and product innovation is the way how they can keep themselves in the competition and ensure that clients do not basically they do not lose the client as such. Second, they have to massively now invest in research and development and deep tech, because that's where the future lies as per prediction. They have to diversify, or we have to diversify exports also, rather than just focusing upon and looking at the traditional market which cater to the Western countries, European countries and American companies. We should also try to find clients in the Asia also, because a lot of opportunities are available there. And overall, we have to strengthen the resilience of our external sector. The building up of foreign exchange reserve is one of such way. So that's how we can ensure that AI disruption can be constructive disruption can be taken advantage of by the Indian companies. They do not we can say lie at the receiving end of the stick in the coming future. That's all for this particular video. If you like it, please like button, share with fellow aspirants, as well as subscribe to the channel for more such content. Thank you very much.